Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined today by my good friend Ryan7. How's it going, Ryan?
I'd like to correct you there, Snappy. You're such a nice person, but you only ever say hello to the beautiful people. I'd also like to say hello to the ugly ones.
I don't think people are ugly. I think all of us are beautiful, you know?
Oh God, you should see me when I take my clothes off. It's not good.
Oh, God, you're hilarious. Too much, too much. But we're here for part 2 of our deep dive into your new tarot collection. And you just finally are able to launch the Kickstarter today. Why don't you tell us all about this?
Yes, Kickstarter is a platform where you put your heart and soul on there, and then loads of nice people come on and pledge you money, and then loads of scammers come on and try and take it off you again. It's been an absolute night. It's been a nightmare.
So tell me about the scammer stuff. Like, what do you mean? I'm so unfamiliar with the whole kind of thing.
I was just saying to you a moment ago that it has a function whereby it asks you when you would like to launch, and my launch would have been on this very show. However, it didn't do that at all. It completely ignored what I'd put and just launched it on the Friday. And this was at 6 o'clock in the morning when I've been up all day, because I had to take it all off because there was a mistake on there that they had made again. So I had to take it all off and then put it all back on again. And within 20 minutes, I'd made 10 grand. I'm like, how's this going on? Somebody had put £10,000 on there, promised me £50,000. And, you know, this is over a course of a couple of hours that they're sending me messages and blowing smoke up my rear, as we say in Britain. And then was like, I just, before we put so much in there, I'm going to need $250 from you. I'm like, yeah, kiss my backside. You're a scammer. And so, yeah, and then the money came off again and I was back down to zero. But things like this, up until this morning, there were more scammers than there were pledges. Let me put it like that. So
that's
each
so
different scam
that was so
slightly
exciting.
different.
When I opened it up, I was like, oh my God, I haven't even pledged yet. I thought I was going to be one of the first. And Ryan is already sitting at 10,000 out of 19,000 needed. I was like, this is going to be a snap, but no.
Yeah, no, it's but as I said, I've not really put too much effort into it yet because it's been, I've worked all the last 2 weeks, like 12, 13, 14-hour days. So I just needed a day off it, basically. And my channel was hacked. So I think I've lost my channel. We'll find out tomorrow morning. But if not, anybody that's looking for Ryan7 on YouTube, you might have to come and find me on a different channel over this week. But we'll get the message out.
Yeah, wow. Just kind of a rocky start. But you know what? I think it's all going to work out. This is an amazing deck, an amazing achievement that you've done. You've put so much love and passion into this. You know, you were telling me, right? Like the tarot basically changed your life, right? You discovered it 13 years ago, and it was kind of like this big awakening for you. And this is sort of the completion of that magical journey, is it not?
It absolutely is the completion of it. Obviously, we all carry on.
Of course.
Until, it's never completed. But the tarot journey, I think, there are more things to be discovered in there, bigger depths. But yeah, it's something of a completion. It's a completion of that love. You know what I mean? It's the end of the alchemical wedding between me and those pieces of, those illustrations.
Yeah, you finished the cycle. You've gone to the end of the world or to the universe, and now you're ready to leap on to the next level of the tower, right?
I very rarely do myself a reading, but I have a prototype here of the cards.
Beautiful.
And I did myself a reading with them last night, and the first thing that came up was a card with my face on it, and then the next one that came up was the universe, or the world as it's known in other decks. And it was like, yes, there you go. And I just didn't put any more than those two cards because it was totally unnecessary.
That's beautiful. Yeah, you got the message you were looking for, right? You've come to the end of this. It's now time to reflect and to imagine yourself going forward in new, bigger ways, which is beautiful.
And I know what that looks like, but I think my main interest now is in actually doing the alchemical work, the consciousness, the meditation, all that kind of stuff, like really putting my time into that.
Right. And for those of you who don't know in our audience, Ryan is already doing this through martial arts. You have your own style that you teach in and train, and you have videos on your channel about this as well. So you really do have kind of a complete alchemical approach.
And is based on tarot. I call the arcana. It's like an anglified version of lots of medieval martial arts, including Budo, the Japanese martial arts. Yeah, and you can see all the. Well, come on, I'll do a couple of postures. So we have the priestess is this one, and you'll see in my card she's doing that. Got the emperor, which is like this, keep you at a distance. The Hierophant's an interesting one. He's kind of doing like like a Tibetan Egyptian kind of thing there, and cool. We know that the Hierophant is like about swapping dimensions or being a dimension above, and with a lot of martial arts, people think very linearly, especially when they get locks and wrist locks or headlocks or whatever. But if you change dimension, and it usually happens with this, you know, the cup dance where you keep the cup there and then you turn it around and the cup stays level even though you're changing through dimensions. It's that idea. And the same, well, if I can get on the screen, same technique works as far as martial arts go as well. So that's all in there. I've not told people about that really, apart from my students.
That's
but
really
it is
cool.
in there, and it will be taught at some point, but not yet. Maybe a year down the line.
Oh, I love that. No, that's big. That's interesting. It makes me really think too, because you see a lot of this in like sword fighting too and whatnot, where the person will put their sword out in front to distract you, or off to the side, or down low, and the whole point is to just get you looking where you're not supposed to be looking. Flip
that's the Hierophant.
Yeah,
you've already got it. Black belt.
No, it's interesting though. That's beautiful, right?
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people
those concepts. It is literally the concepts move into the posture moves into the art, and by working between these two things, you can almost extract it yourself. And that's the beauty of the tarot, though, isn't it? It's these archetypal symbols and the self-extracting. A lot like a zip file. If you can understand the code of the zip file, everything comes out, and just by meditating on it, you get it.
Yeah.
Could tarot ever really be lost? Probably not.
Because you're dealing with, I was talking with my friend Graham, and we've been studying this artist Artaud, and what he would call the tarot is, in his terminology, would be the subjectile, which is almost like another word for deity. It's the primordial ideal form that's beyond image, but also image itself, and the tarot is an abstracted of that subjectile or that deity, these are primordial. They're so intrinsic to us as human beings.
You called them deities last time, and what did I call them? Indivisible, immortal things that'll be there with or without you. They're just facts of the universe. And as you come from the primordial zero/oneness, and everything starts to divide, when you get these first sets of things, set's a very Saturnian word, is it not? When you get these sets of things, those are these archetypes we're talking about. So, if you've got life, then you've got death. If you've got existence, you've got non-existence. And when you place a few of these things together, then we start to get these astrotheological, tarot, occult, Greek myth, these ideas, the gods, the immortals, these things that will be there with or without you. If there was no life, there would still be death. Stars would still explode. Black holes would devour entire cosmic areas. It's just, these are facts of existence.
Exactly, right? We're talking about the primordial facts of life, right? We're trying to move to those abstracted forms of nature and reality, the things that drive creation, the fundamental building blocks itself. And a lot of people miss this about the tarot, what the tarot is trying to do. They see the fool's journey. They see the pretty art, They do not realize, some of them will see even the tree of life, but they don't recognize the even further abstractions that are going on here, where it's the literal unfolding of the universe, right? It's a microcosm.
I think because it is so primordial, and because it is based on essentially number and geometry at its very most basic, that
of course
from that flowers so many different things. That's why I'm able to put something as complex and as really abstract as a martial art, into these things. It's also the reason why, for example, and I thought this would be a good place to kick off. But as usual, me and you have started chatting and gotten it going ourselves. But big up to Dion. Miss you, dude. Wish you were here.
Yeah, Dion got stuck at work, and he may get to join us in the last half hour. Fingers crossed. So, but continue, please.
Yeah.
So
he's probably watching us on his toilet break anyway. So hello, mate. So I thought something that's interesting. So we said, well, okay. So tarot is based on number, essentially. The number 1 has a meaning. The number 2 has a meaning. The number 3 has a meaning. Now, if we take it to the number 7, that's kind of the first real set in the tarot is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's another one at 7. There's another like divider at 7 when we hit the chariot. Then there's another one at 10 when we hit the wheel of fortune. And there's a kind of Pythagorean completion here. So there's something special about 1 through 7. And that is something the ancients taught for a long time and is still the basis somewhat of a classical education. And that is the trivium, excuse me, and quadrivium. The trivium is grammar, logic, and rhetoric, or knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And then you've got the quadrivium, which is mathematics, geometry, music, and astronomy. Sorry. So that's the basis of this classical education. What it is about the music, astronomy, maths, and geometry is they're all following on from each other. Maths is your basic, it's your abstract numbers. Geometry is that in real life, you know, we're starting to get something more concrete. Then you got your music, which is obviously based on geometry and mathematics. And then we've got astronomy, which is the music of the spheres and is the major secret of the major arcana. So what were those first 3 and how the hell are they encoded in the tarot? Well, the number 1 is like an index. Every number is the number 1. The number 3 is 1 and 2 more. Everything's made up of series of 1s. We're all individuals. The number 2 is introducing 1 and another 1, and it's how we get idea. You know, you know what you are by what you're not, and you're able to get a coordinate. You say me, you. There's yin and a yang. There's a distance between us now because there's something over there and I'm over here. To get to you, I've got to go over there. You know, just simple things. The number 3 would be the system of these 2 individuals together. You know, when me and you talk, I can say something, you say something, and then we might have a new idea between these things that we exchange. Okay? So the magician is the number 1. And in classical tarot, or in the right from the very beginning, it's a scribe, or later on an actual magician, in between a juggler, a trickster character, but he has a table with his effects on it, and that's an index, like a table of contents. He's the first one. He's not done the rest of the tarot yet. He's complete. He just doesn't know himself because he's not gone to that 2 where he can compare and contrast himself. So this is grammar. Grammar is collating all the relevant information together. Then in stage 2, makes sense.
Perfect.
Then in stage 2, we've got logic, and logic is comparing me to you. We've been outside with the magician. He's not very internal at all. The magician, he gets all this stuff, but he's not really studied himself. He's got to go through all the cards, as we said. Well, the high priestess, the second card, is internal. She's absolutely the internal. She's the matrix. She's the thing that everything is embodied by. Absolutely. So by comparing and contrasting himself to his inner self, or to her, we get logic, because that's what logic is. You compare one thing to another. Do those 2 things go together? No. Right, we go. That's no good. Do these 2 things compare? Yes, right, we add that. Now we're getting logic. This works. Then we get a third thing. If the magician came together, if you know what I'm saying, with the high priestess, we'd have a pregnant lady. This is rhetoric. This is wisdom. And so the next card on is the Empress, and she is a pregnant lady. She's an Empress. She's the one that gives birth to the realm. She
The
gives birth
absolute
to the
feminine.
realm, and this is rhetoric. This is wisdom. And there you go. This is how already these ideas just sprout out of the tarot. Not many people talk about that. I mean, it wasn't something I read. It was just an understanding that I came to.
No, and it's so beautiful, and it's you. I wish that people would make these kind of extrapolations and do more of this comparative mythology and do this great work, because if you connect these things, especially within the Western tradition, they're so interconnected. And you can see that the tarot is an expression of the entire occult worldview, at least in the West. Like, there's a reason why the Golden Dawn had this as one of their last rites, where you made your own personal tarot, because it was supposed to prove that you understood the mysteries of the universe, that you could unfold the tree of life and expose everything, that you truly understood the process, at least, of knowing the self. We recognize that that's a lifelong, ever-changing journey without end, right? But we at least need to know that you have the tools at your disposal. And you said a really important thing right at the beginning. You started out with the 3 and the 4 and the 7. This is the secret of the entire Pythagorean number system, right? The 3 is the star, Venus, which you draw down to the earth. The earth is the square, Saturn, the masculine phallus, right? Which you draw into to create and procreate. And what do they become? The divine androgyne, the 7, right? That beautiful mixing of the 2 spheres, right? That alchemical process. You'll see this on the Rebbe, right? The Rebbe stands on the earth in between a square and a triangle with the 3 and the 4 there. And he is the representation of the rainbow, right?
Yes. Yes. I love I say Rebis, but yeah, I love Rebbe. I love you, Rebbe.
Right.
Yeah. It's another one of those great alchemical diagrams that you could just meditate on forever. I've found some amazing things in that diagram, specifically that angle that points up to the pole star. I don't think anybody's actually discovered that since it was made. I think I might be the first one. I've certainly not seen it anywhere, but yeah, I love that diagram.
Right.
I plan to, if this
ahead.
Kickstarter works out, I want to do 3 things. I want to make your Greek tarot. I want to do one of my friends keeps saying he wants to do the Ripley scroll. Do you know the Ripley scroll and alchemical
No,
English?
I'm not familiar.
If anybody watches this ago, if you happen to remember it, I'll send you one actually on the Discord. I'll put it on the Discord for everybody. In fact, it's a really long scroll of alchemical operation from a famous English alchemist called George Ripley, and it's gorgeous. And it's really cool. And it's like as big as a high ceiling wall. It's really cool. Gorgeous thing. And what was the third thing? Yeah, I want to do the Rebis again, the Rebis. The Rebbe.
Right. Well, I feel like the Rebbe is one of these keys, right? And it shows you the connection between alchemy, the tarot, and something like martial art and like physical yoga, right? Like all of this is integrated.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a reason why, like, the Greeks, when they met the Indian mystics, they called them the gymnosophists, because these were people in their mind that were combining all of these different ideas. They were doing philosophy, they're doing exercise, diet, and they were combining them into this middle path. Someone like Julian talks about this. The true sage walks the middle path, has that balance of diet, has that control of their physical body, has that ability to transform and move between the bowls, to adapt as nature happens to us, right?
Excellent. Love that. Yeah, that's my philosophy. That's my philosophy. It's so obvious when you look at all this stuff that, I mean, for me, I'm not a very faithful person, as in having faith in something that I can't quite grasp. But it was so obvious to me that everyone's going the middle path, the middle path, the middle path, the middle. I'm like, okay, I'll take it on faith and it seems logical that following the middle path will give you the most choice, the most ability to respond.
Right.
And it sounded cut short, but that is how it is.
It just makes sense when we look in reality. There are times when you need to move, right? When you need to be more conservative, or you need to be more practical or more imaginative, or what have you, right? We need to move, right? You can't stay put in any position, even in the middle position, right? But there has to be a recognition here that the extremes almost always lead to destruction, right? They almost always lead to a resetting of the system. And that's by design, by natural design. You know, it's almost like the universe is funneling you, and it's telling you time and time again, if you refine your path and you learn to walk, it's not going to be a straight line, but it's going to be a mostly straight line, you know?
Yes. But you got 2 feet and one needs to go in front of the other. And there's a polarity there even. It's always left and right. You know, there is, as we said last time, there is really no middle path. It's selecting left or right all the time. Maybe sometimes you can pick both, but not in many circumstances that happens. However, this is the path. This is the way you go forward, especially as a magician type or a witch or mystic or whatever. Although within that, all things in, what's the phrase? All things in moderation, including moderation, is the phrase. So sometimes you need to experience that Dionysian maximum. You also need to experience the Stoic maximum. You need to go in all directions and try them all out. Try every position, everybody.
Right. This is, I think, part of the experience. Life exists in its ultimate multiplicity, and so that we can experience the infinitude. Right. So we can go through all, like, part of life is that we need to fail. We need to fail and we need to suffer for it. People don't like to hear that, but it's part of the plan so that you learn and refine from those actions. Right. It's everything in the universe is tit for tat, you know?
Yes. And that you can try and remain yourself as well. Right. Because when you're faced with those things, they can make you have reactions that you didn't expect of yourself.
True.
You know, that time, there was a time this week, somebody was claiming to be one thing, all peace and love. And then suddenly they said the rudest thing to me straight away. And I was like, you aren't peace and love at all. And then I said something to them that I shouldn't have said. And as soon as I was saying it, I was saying, you shouldn't be talking like this, Ryan, stop it. So I did. I stopped myself and I was like, I shouldn't have said that, but you're not the person you're claiming to be. And at least I stopped myself. You know, I'm still reprimanding myself, obviously, but at least I stopped myself and recognized it. And that's the first step.
Right? That's the power of the Buddha, right? The Buddha is not the one who overcomes emotion, but that recognizes it and allows it to pass, right? Can maintain that equilibrium of self, right? And this is, like you're saying, it's such a powerful and important thing, right? Like, you need to be able to see where the things are coming and adapt. You were talking earlier about the two. The magician, the one with the index, the wand. The power of the magician is that he can move up and down that slider and select where he's going to go. He can literally become anything. And we need to recognize that we have this power of will, in that if you don't want to fight, you don't have to fight. You can imagine another way, right?
Trickery,
and this is part
usually.
of the power of the magician. What?
Trickery, usually, for the magician.
Of course. Part of it is.
Should we have a look at the magician? Should we have a look at him? Have you got everything there to go on?
Let's bring up your card here. Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
There's the magician. So I've got him flying. He usually has a table in front of him with, well, the very first one, he's got the tools of a scribe, because he's this mercurial figure. Mercury is the communicator, the scribe of the gods. He's much like Thoth, and he, you know, when you're talking back in the day when only certain people could read and write, you'd rely on them to take down a message and then pass it on to somebody else. Now, I like to use the story of the guy's taken, you know, the guy's gone to market, found the scribe. Hello, scribe, I need you to give this person £3,000. Yes, very good. £2,000. Here's £2,000. And he takes £1,000 for himself, because this is the nature of a message. You know, the person communicating the message. Sorry, let me start that again. The person that's given the message to the scribe, if he can't read that message or can't hear that message delivered, doesn't know what's in the message. So there's a chance for trickery there. This is what a magician does. That's what a stage magician does. He tells you he's doing one thing and he's doing another thing over here, because he's sneaky.
It's part of the magic of everything, right? And it's also even it's intrinsic to the mystery, right? We were talking about satirists before we went online. And part of that role is to obscure and to hide the mystery. And part of the role of the priest is to obscure and hide the mystery, right? Pythagoras used to do his rites to the gods behind a curtain, and that became parody within the Western tradition, all the way up to Wizard of Oz and beyond.
Wizard of Oz, yeah, yeah.
You know, but there's magic here by obscuring and not allowing people to see what actually happens, right? Like this is why the whole process of magic is to know the self, because the real fear is in the unknown, right? The real fear is in your head. It's in what you create. The real power is in what you create. It's what you allow yourself to believe Pythagoras is doing. What is he doing behind the curtain? Mixing potions. What do you think he's doing? Who knows, right?
I'm thinking of those scenes from Austin Powers where he's a silhouette on the curtain. He's got Mini-Me next to him. We've all seen that film. So I think when you boil down to it on the human level, for the magician, it's about attention. Where's your attention? That's what a magician's doing. He's making you look over here, or that thing's going on over here, and it's like, how expanded is your consciousness to know where to put your attention? If you know he's a magician and know how a magician operates, then you know not to look at the thing he's showing you and look behind him. So it's about your attention. And I would say the next card, the priestess, is more like about intention, or like what's going on within. You know, what's going on within that magician. What is he a good guy? Is he trying to teach you, or is he trying to obfuscate reality from you?
Right. The magician is sort of that enactor of reason, right? He speaks truth into you know, he writes the story, right? He projects will. He's that enactor, right? He wields the skeptron, that phallus. And like you said, right, he orders the universe. So it's all about this Saturnian magic and wielding and asserting power. Whereas the priestess is the inversion of this. It's that inner work, right? It's the weaving and bringing things together rather than asserting the will, right? The feminine power. A lot of people don't understand this about the tarot. They get too caught up within the gendered sexes, and they don't recognize that the feminine power in the universe works with the universe. It works with the flow. It guides the waters, right? Whereas that masculine power in the tarot is that fiery scepter, right? It comes down, it's a club, it strikes, right? Yeah. It sets things into motion, right? Rather than direct the flow, you know?
These things are perfectly embodied in the wand and the cup, the aces of the tarot, those elements, you know, elements as in, well, you can break that word down. L is Saturn, and ment is mind. So these parts of the parts of Saturn, the building blocks. And so the club is often on fire. It's very phallic. It's very rigid and straight, but it's on fire, and it's often sprouting life as well. You know, you might see a leaf even though it's on fire. So it's this masculine action, energy, the yang. You know, it's the go. Let's do this. It's testosterone. It's that kind of an idea. Whereas the feminine, the cup, she's still, and she holds that energy. She holds the energy into hydrogen, into oxygen, into then water, and this then flows out and forms the shape of this cup, this matrix. These are perfect analogies. They're very well considered. And very embodied in the tarot.
Exactly, right? The priestess is this power of the cocoon, even. Right? The transformation, doing that inner reflection that allows you to be reborn as a butterfly, right? This is why they talk about the princesses are so important too, right? The princess, unlike the princes, the princess is that transformative power, that inner work that can bloom and become the queen. Whereas the princes are that force of going out and fighting with the world and struggling, learning through experience, right?
Yeah. And then the princesses are like the cycles of it already embodied. If you just release and relax, like Luke Skywalker using the Force, you can just go with it and see. It's roll your boats. It's very Taoist, I would say. Crowley loved those princesses, by the way,
Oh yeah,
as a major contributor to the tarot.
He really restored them by making them princesses, changing them from the page. I mean, you do get this idea with the squire or the page that they become the knight, but I feel it's much better as that feminine principle, and it balances the tarot, restores the gender balance. You know,
I mean, there's a bit of an androgyny to those pages, though, being at the prepubescent.
Of course,
I get it, and we're talking about a different age where, you know, the masculine and feminine roles were a bit different, which is cool.
Absolutely.
You know?
From that medieval perspective, from that noble knight perspective, right? You got to remember, this is a middle-class project. These are middle-class people. These are squires and knights who are making this. So, of course, seeing that knight, the squire, the page is the one who refines themselves and goes through this process to become the knight. It's a perfect analogy for that era. I just, in my conception, in my reality, I prefer the princesses. And like I said, I really like the gender balance.
I've used princesses for that very reason. You know, I can, it's my tarot. I can do what the bloody hell I want to with it. And that's what I chose to do.
I love this, that you've kind of taken from many different perspectives and many different sides. Like, I know we talked about this a lot. You've rejected outright Crowley's reinterpretation of the astrology and his reattributions of the Kabbalah. So what do you, so like, who the princess still Camel in your version? Or the priestess, sorry?
Priestess, no.
So who's,
I initially had a camel on there, but it just doesn't, when you really look into it, and I learned Hebrew to understand it. No, it just doesn't work out for me. He's trying to stick too much in there. Crowley was a bit of a bastard, really, wasn't he? And a very willful man, and he just did what he wanted to.
Well, there's also lines in there, right? So this is something that has come up. Like, if you look at, do I have my book of thought? I think I have it here. Anyway, but if you look in the book of Thoth and you look at his diagram, that infinity that shows his reorientation of the, he didn't even draw that. Lady Frida Harris drew that. And then he kind of recanted and said that he didn't say it correctly to her. Like, part of the problem with the book of Thoth is that he purposely puts blinds in it, and other times he kind of just didn't want to do the work. So Lady Frida Harris, she kind of was stuck dealing with him, you know? So there's, it's wild. The book of Thoth is both Crowley at his best and Crowley at his worst. You know?
I mean, I did swear, but I think I put it perfectly when you just say he's a bit of a bastard, and he was. But the 20th century pretty much blooms from that man. The amount of influence he had between him and Tesla, you know, there you go, 20th century.
All I know is that, like, okay, for whatever reason, his religion became a new religion in the West and has dominated much of American pop culture since, and has become a global defining cultural force, whether we like it or not. Crowley is a prophet of the new age. Exactly. He's on Sgt. Pepper's, Jim Morrison and the Doors, all over Hollywood, all over science fiction. L. Ron Hubbard wouldn't exist without him. You know, Asimov wouldn't exist without. A lot of these guys are really reading him and are reacting to him. You know, it's not so much what Crowley did, but it's the reaction and the reverberations that he spawned, you know, in the movement he created.
Crowley said famously, Zadie is not the star. And what anybody, for anybody watching, he was relating to, Zadie's a letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And what me and Snappy are actually talking about, if no one's following, is that early in the 17th century, a man called Eliphas Levi decided that, and possibly before, I'm not sure, but I think that's where it comes from, that the Hebrew letters, there's the same number of Hebrew letters there are tarot cards. So these things were associated. The Hebrew letters, if you don't know, actually have a meaning. So, like, famously, Vav is a hook or a nail. Yod is like a hand. They mean lots of things. So you'd imagine that the first letter would be the first card of the tarot. but not for Crowley because he was a bit of a bastard. So he put it as his card 0. And although it does, you can force it to make sense. There we go. We can force it to make sense. For me, it just doesn't make sense. Even when you line them up in order. So the first letter would be the first card rather than card 0, which is the Fool. It goes to the first card, the Magician. It kind of works for a bit and then doesn't work at all. And so Crowley said he had this vision that Zadi was not the star. Zadi's a letter, the star's a card. And so it's because he'd put this double looping system that Snappy just showed us. If you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot to this. So it really comes from the Book of Thoth. So to understand Crowley, you really have to understand him in 2 periods, post-revelation and pre-revelation. And this is a post-revelation book. And it was a quintessential moment for Crowley, but him and his wife at the time, Rose, went to Egypt and they performed sexual magic within one of these temples. I can't remember which one, but later on, after doing these rites, they were then in an adjacent museum, and Crowley stumbled upon a stela. And this became known within Thelema as the Stela of Revealing. And after seeing this stela and reading it, he became inspired. Later that night, he describes being possessed by his holy daimones, his guardian angel, sometimes a god in its own right, depends on when you're reading Crowley, but Aiwass is his name.
Yeah.
And Aiwass does automatic writing with Crowley, but also possesses Rose, and Rose at times speaks things. This assembling of this series of events, the automatic writing, the speech of Rose, and then the revealing on the stela itself, becomes this text, the Book of Thoth, or the Book of Law. And this is sort of his new revelation and new prophetic revealing for the new Ion. And it's this whole big thing that sparks his new religion of Thelema, love of the will, right, in Greek.
I'd also say it signifies something of a more of a plain speaking, less poetic Crowley as well. He doesn't lose it, but he's a bit more revealing. I think it's because he's getting a bit older as well, and not too long after, there's a child on the way too. So
yeah, there's a lot that happens. You know, this is after he leaves the Golden Dawn. I think a lot of that poetry is a result of really trying to ingratiate himself to the Victorian establishment and to people like William Blake and, Yeats and these giants who were also occultists. And Crowley really wanted their respect, and they never gave it to him. He never in his lifetime achieved respect as a poet. I think he's a great poet.
After that Leah poem, did you read that?
Oh my God, that's terrible. But
he's filth. He's absolutely filthy.
He's disgusting. He's all over the place. He's all over. But if you for me, his peak kind of stuff is when you see Hymn to Pan. Yo Pan. That's just beautiful. I really love that one.
Brilliant stuff. I like that Leah poem personally because it's funny. It's not filthy. It's funny. Everybody after this, just go and read it. It's great.
Absolutely, he's got some wild stuff. But within the Book of Law, there is a passage that says the Sati is not the star, and then there's another line. I can't remember it fully, but there's another line to it. He talks about it here. I have the book. He says, "For the star is referred to as Aquarius in the zodiac, the emperor to Aries. Now Aries and Aquarius are on each side of Pisces, just as Leo and Libra are on each side of Virgo. That is to say, the correction in the Book of Law gives a perfect symmetry in the zodiacal attributions, just as if a loop were formed at one end of the ellipses to correspond exactly with the existing loop." So
Crowley was an Englishman, and as a fellow Englishman, I say, Alistair, bollocks! You're just doing it because you want to, and because in the earlier tarot, the attributions for Leo and Libra are mixed. So for a lot of the cards, Libra is number 8, and Leo is number 11. Now, when you look at the tarot, there's a definite sequence, and it just gets messed up there because you're going through the zodiac. So you'd expect number 8 to be Leo and number 11 to be Libra, which in my deck it is. I just put it back because there's no need for all this silliness. And it's number 8 does suit the Libra better than number 11, even though some of the visual references, like 11's 2 pillars, and that card of Justice, which is Libra, has something of this balance to it. But the number 8's got 2 bits to it as well. If you're going to look graphically, so
well, this is the thing I
you've
find
got to look much deeper than that, though.
Right, like I really love the Thoth Tarot, and so I use Crowley's attributions because it works. You know, I can understand why people reject it too at the same time and go back to that more elliptical classical loop version. Yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I feel like whatever works. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got something that Crowley didn't have, and that's the internet. And you know, I compared, as I say all the time, my whole thing was I was comparing and contrasting them, and it's not really down to Crowley, it's down to Pythagoras. What does the number 8 mean? And even that's not down to Pythagoras, because you find out what the number 8 means by comparing it to the rest of the numbers. That's what it is.
And it goes much earlier, right? All this is going, you know, you're right. Yes. You're right. The thing with Crowley is he's a prophet of a new religion, and he's trying to transform and create this synergistic flow. And he's really obsessed, like even within that diagram that I was showing, he shows you he transforms the star of the pagans. So classically the pagans would do a star. You're drawing down the star, you draw the star. And this would not be, it would be 2 triangles, right, that you would draw with your thing. He transforms it into the unicursal hexagram, right? It's
a great word.
And it's a beautiful shape, and it is mathematically beautiful, and it is magical. But it's this synergistic flow that he brings in because he loves that. And it's not apparent in the earlier tradition.
He was a great and awful man. This is Aleister Crowley. This is why we're still talking about him now. This is what, as I use that deck the most as well. I mean, not as much as my deck now.
Right.
But because that's from me, for me. But I still use Crowley's deck as well. And it's still my favorite deck. That's not my own. So, yeah. So shall we carry on looking at my deck, seeing as this is supposed to be me showing off?
I want to talk to you about this because you don't have the camel. What do you use as but it looks like you have a peacock. It's similar to the Crowley or to Lady Frida Harris's version with the weave as well. Can you talk about this a bit? So how could you talk about this? So you just said the weaving behind, which is, if you could see close, it's actually a spider's web of a cloth that's draped behind her, which is the veil of reality. You know, you've got to look behind the priestess to see what's going on. She's like the guardian of the matrix, you know, to see what everything's really made up of. So behind her there's actually 2 boots. Those are 2 shins that you could see with the 2 caps on top at the edges, the 2 pillars. And if you look very closely when you get the card, you can see there's 2 boots in the water, and then behind her, the archway is a vagina, and so you're entering that woman, that matrix. Between her legs are closed. This scantily clad bit is this veil, the veil of reality. On top of those 2 pillars, there's a reference to the zodiac, a reference to the mind, and a reference to the poles of the earth and things like that, which we talked about in previous episodes. The pole leads up to a still point in the sky. Meditation is that. She's meditating. She's also got a book open on her lap. This is the book of life, often closed because you're not supposed to see the mystery. You've got to go and investigate it. But for me and these cards, I'm opening the book. I'm trying to show you as well as I can with as few blinds as possible what's going on. From that, there's a rainbow that pours into a cup, which is the Ace of Cups. This cup we already spoke about, which is her essence, I suppose. Both the cup and the water in the cup is her essence.
From that, there's a little
Pornea.
alchemical. Yeah, there's an alchemical allegory going on for the what's called the lower dantian, or the Holy Grail, which is the mid in your center of gravity, basically. Something to talk about another time. From that, we've got a bit of another alchemical allegory for, because that's a mushroom cup. If you could see close, it's an upturned grail form, Amanita muscaria. From that, we got two waters: the water of remembrance, the water of forgetting, which is also a doubling for the potion and urine, because with Amanita you drink the urine.
Right.
Mystical stuff.
And you need the dote and the antidote, right? In
Yeah, the
balance.
dose and the antidote, perfectly said. So under the water, in place of the camel, is two creatures. The difficult to see, and one of the more occulted things on this for me, but they're slightly occulted for a reason. They're difficult to see and obscure. The two, I wouldn't call them mutant creatures, but the two creatures that are formed of different. You can't quite put your finger on what it is. One looks a bit like a squid. One looks a bit like a dolphin fish kind of thing. They're just these very base primordial creatures that are difficult. They're almost intangible. Look, the universe makes beasts until she makes beauty. You know, most forms in look at life. You know, so many things born aren't as they're supposed to be and don't survive very long. It's just a fact of life.
It's also, you know, the tarot kind of tells us this, right? You know, there is a reality that we learn about. Like when I was studying anthropology in university, we recognize now that there was a process of self-selection that happened in the earliest matriarchal societies, where the most aggressive men and most aggressive male characteristics were bred out, similar to what we see with bonobo chimps, where if you were a violent man, you didn't get laid unless you contributed and participated in helping and didn't hurt the women. You didn't get to participate. So it made humanity a lot more docile. And there's some speculation when we look at Neanderthals were bigger and stronger, but because of this extraordinary aggression, we don't see them getting into groups of larger than 100 or so. Whereas we've never even met the amount of humans that can band together, right? We're in the billions and still going.
Yeah, yeah, very true, very true. Yeah, so life. So the high priestess, this matriarch, the matrix, the feminine principle, she will shag anything. Basically, she's love. The whole universe is attracted to itself, or you know, it wants to do this thing. But because it's attracted to itself, it's not always correct. It's not always the highest form that's able to manifest from that. So it makes beasts as well. And as Snappy said, through the other parts of the matrix, these things are either accepted or rejected. The evolution, as we've currently understood it, that is that principle happening all the time.
We'll see this in the tarot too when we get to your strength card. And you'll see it fully on display because that really encodes this. That's that power of the feminine transforming the beast into guardian. You know, this is why in the classical versions, it's a unicorn, right? It's represented. The unicorn is the masculine energy turned into an absolute protector. Yes.
It's still a bit, I mean, the unicorn's very dangerous, but also it's the classical male knight archetype. It's I am dangerous. There's two ways of seeing this. You can either walk in the room and go, everybody better watch out because I'm here and I'm hard as nails, and so you all better be careful of me. Or the enlightened person would walk in and say, everybody's a bit safer because I'm here. And that's the unicorn.
Right.
So should we look at the Empress?
Let's check out
this got controversial, this one, when I put it on a Facebook group without anything else.
Oof.
But yeah, they were all like, oh, she's sexualized, she's black, all this stuff. I'm like, oh God, I forgot about Americans are so blooming polarized. No offense, Americans, but you guys are very polarized right now. And like, so it was all ladies. Half the ladies on there were like, no, it's amazing. I love this card. That's brilliant. That the black lady would be Eve, you know, the first and all that. I'm like, that's what it's supposed to be. Why is she so horribly pregnant? It's like some kind of sordid porn material. I'm like, she's the planet Venus. She's a planet. It's like people didn't know anything about tarot at all and just wanted an argument and just wanted to say horrible things to me straight away. It's like, no, I love her. I love her. I mean, literally, I love her.
Right. We have to all recognize, this was hard for me to recognize. On the internet, there's always going to be people who will interpret you in the most uncharitable way in order to virtue signal to the world that they are holy. And it's like you're being reactionary to something that's silly. You know, we're celebrating femininity. You're celebrating the mother here. You're celebrating this kind of primordialness. Yeah, if you assume the worst, you can take this and turn it into something horrific, but you have to make leaps and bounds of imagination. Like, calm down, you know.
I think she looks great. Anyway,
she looks amazing.
So there's so much in this. There's so much in this card. I love it.
Let's talk.
Really, she's the Black Madonna. That's my main inspiration. That's why she's that dark. I mean, she's dark green, but that's why she's dark. It's the Black Madonna, one of the most sacred icons of the West, from Egypt all the way around the West,
everywhere, you know. And it's a beautiful image. Like, we got to unpack some of this. Like, I love, first thing that I noticed is that you have the spiral with the shooting star in the middle, and then you have the star represented in the fruit. That's beautiful.
So within that pentagram, and the reason why the Pythagoreans had it on the palm to greet each other, and the reason why it's an occultism in the beginning is, well, it's twofold. One of them is that the ratios within a pentagram are all phi, golden ratio. And then, so that's a golden ratio spiral that's coming from the center of the belly. And also, that's the orbit of Venus over 8 years. Venus, if viewed from the Earth, makes a pentagram over 8 years.
Yep.
Fantastic. And this is the Venus card, Mother Earth. There's a more Saturnian sacred feminine that's more abstract. And then as you pull things down to Earth, there's an earthly, more physical feminine, which is Venus. Love, sex, being pregnant, making life.
There's a duality to the feminine. Like anytime I draw the Empress card, I always I really like in Crowley's because he depicts it as the 6-sided triangle with the 2 triangles down and up, recognizing that duality of the feminine. And in its extremes, you have the astral mother, Aphrodite Urania, the perpetual virgin, perfected creation. And then you have Aphrodite Pandemos, the lover of all. The rapacious whore, Lady Babylon. You know?
Yeah, and she's just had sex. I know she's very pregnant, but if you can kind of see the god is actually in the center of the image in the background, walking away. He's left already. He's done his bit and he's left. And that's an analogy for so that's an analogy for the earliest myths where that God came down, made the world, and then left. That's what, because you can't see God, can you? I mean, you can infer God, but you can't see it. You can't see him. You can't see that masculine principle. Energy is disappeared. You can see fire, but that's about it. You know, you can't see light. You need to see something it bounces off. Therefore, you're only ever seeing the feminine. And there's an analogy there. I've also got the snake from Adam and Eve in the tree.
I noticed.
But you were asking about the apple. So yeah, so she, to some extent, her belly is that Uranic deity, and then the more Pandemos version is in the apple there. You know, one's on earth and one's more heavenly. Simple as
beautiful. That. I love it. I love it. And can you talk about the small person here who's holding up the
little dead person? Yeah. Yes. Well, like birth, ladies and gentlemen, is death. Simple as that. To be brought into life is to be guaranteed to die. None of us are getting out of here alive. It's just the way it is. So she is the beginning of death as much as she's the beginning of life. And that's one of the most important things about these matriarchal characters, that you know, they give it, they take it away.
Always, right? It's that cyclical power, right? You know, the great mother, always also representative of that death and the cycle, right? And generation, right? Which is learning to grow and expand upon, to build upon these cycles, to transform, right? Which is
Yes.
intrinsic to all of this. All of like with the tarot, I hope it's supposed to show people is that all of these energies come together to create new variation, to create experience, so that we can learn and evolve from experience, right?
Yeah. And the other thing about her, I think that some people might have found slightly offensive is that she kind of looks sexy, but she's really sexy. She's gorgeous. We all want her,
Yeah.
male and female. You know, that's what we want out of life. More life, please. And so I've actually got her a bit drugged. So she's drugged on her own hormones. All of nature is drugged on its own hormones. It's pleasing itself. It's devouring itself. It's fucked up on itself, you know.
It's debaucherous, yeah.
Pleasure is pleasurable. Pleasure is drugging, and that's what she is.
Beautiful. You know, that feminine empress energy is the natural world, is the prakriti, is the creation itself, right? And it's that mixing and molding of forms, right? And it is, yeah, it's all of that stuff, right? You have to have everything. It's that material. Whereas when we get to the emperor, we're now going to see the opposite of this, right?
Yeah, the emperor's that masculine principle. We've had the magician kind of have sex with the empress, retire, and gotten the empress pregnant. Sorry, the high priestess got pregnant, is the empress, then has a child, the number 4, and everything starts again. He's kind of a higher version of the magician, really. He's this masculine principle. What does the masculine do? Well, if the magician's more heavenly, as it were, more ethereal, and so is the high priestess, the empress is more earthly, so is the emperor. Now, what does the masculine archetype do? Well, he sacrifices himself, first of all. In fact, that's symbolized in Jesus on the cross. That's the masculine principle in the West. The feminine principle, which we just had, is the empress, which is the Holy Mother, the Black Madonna and child. That's, you know, these are the two masculine and feminine symbols for the West. So this guy, he sacrifices himself. He knows his dominion. He explores his dominion. He, like a lion, he makes sure that his territory is covered and everybody within his household, within his kingdom, is safe. And he does that by putting himself on the line. That's what he does. So there are so many other things involved with this that, you know, this is when tarot now, as those first 3 are very complex, very important, but very simple. And as we increase in complexity now, so we've had 1, meet 2, gotten pregnant as 3, had a baby, number 4. This is this guy. We're kind of starting again. He can go off and meet other ladies and get them pregnant and do other things. But he's in this kind of protector role. You know, this is the masculine energy put to good use. He's protecting things. If you look within the folds of his cape, there's actually a sexy lady there. I've given her vampiric eyes to show that actually she's not as good. He's got to be careful about who he's protecting.
You know, it's also it's interesting too, right? Like, just as we saw with the Empress, there's a duality to the Emperor. On one hand, he is the absolute protector, the ultimate builder, the one who can accomplish anything through that magic of the scepter. But at the same time, he's also the absolute tyrant. The one who asserts his will and tries to not let anything change, right? And which is why it's so important that he's that 4, right? That very earthly rule, right? He's the one who's trying to establish the foundation, to build that tower. He represents authority. And authority can be that saving force that protects you, or it can be that force of stagnation. You know,
yes,
we have to recognize that duality in this image as well.
We have that. He's actually stood on the tower he's built, but because of his fire, because of his willpower, it's kind of melting again into lava and forming a lava. You know, you can barely see it, but there's a lava pool beneath him. He's actually lit by that lava. Behind him, we can see his previous constructions, and there's a little cipher in there for 432, which is middle C in Pythagorean tuning, or is it an A? It's either C or A, I can't remember. But just since that I've put other things in here, again, I've exposed them, not hidden them, but I need to keep them in symbols. There's a nice analogy actually in the background for his masculinity, and that is if you can see where the sun's setting, there's a rocket blasting off into the sky. You know, he's this spirit of exploration, is this masculine spirit that we need. Really, that masculine spirit that he embodies is the spirit of humanity. You know, it's the greater to boldly go where no one has gone before. That's
right.
what
It's that
is.
exploration of the physical, right? As that four, it's that masculine, but grounded entirely in the earth and manipulating this physical reality. So all of our achievements of science and of building, that's the emperor energy, that accomplishing.
If he's a tyrant, he's doing it for himself. He's doing it for his own ego. But if he's not a tyrant, he's doing it for his woman. Most men, I do most of the things we do most of the time for the hammer of a woman. You know, you want to look good in front of the ladies. You might want to attract somebody. Just most things we do are because of ladies, because of that dance of sex that not sex as in, but sex as in coming together, you know, the bonding, the pair. And, you know, I've put a negative feminine in this. She might be a sexy lady, but she's a bit vampiric, which is a negative aspect of a female. He's protecting the wrong thing in this, but I'm showing that tyranny, that she's actually an analogy for his out of control ego if he is that tyrant. Equally, there's a sacrificial lamb below him, which is it's a nod and a wink to that Western tradition of Jesus, the lamb, the Ares, you know, that Martian principle of war is sacrificed as well. But the whole Jesus thing. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a pagan either. I don't know what the hell I am anymore. But I'm bringing all these things together, and I suppose that's a bit of a Jesus symbol, if anything. But Jesus is a symbol of so many other things, including Ares.
And Dionysus, he's kind of he's a composite of a lot of these different traditions. But so is the tarot. So it's all good, right? We're dealing with primordial images. Don't try to. I think part of the problem is when we try to humanize Christ and not see him as the Christ. You know, Krishna and Christ in my mind are the same being. You know, that's this Apollonian striving for love and harmony. You know.
It's the top. Well, he's the top of the pyramid. You can see he's built the pyramid below him. He's the top of the pyramid, and that's what we're aiming for. That's what we're all aiming for. That's what Jesus is. You know, in the newer form of Jesus in the Western tradition, what he's become. It's this striving for the thing at the top. We'll never get there, but that's what we should be aiming for.
Yeah, exactly. He became a alchemical symbol for that entire process of self-refinement. You know, the one becomes many so it can know itself and then return back to that cosmic oneness of the womb, right?
You've just explained the tarot. That sentence there is what the tarot is.
Yep, exactly.
You're going up through the numbers to know yourself. You know, one might be might have everything there. We said is an index. An index is all the contents laid out. You might know what's in the book, but you've not read the book yet. So you got to go through the book of the tarot, through the numbers, up and up and up. You know, one might be all. You know, the universe is one, but in paradox, the further you go through the numbers, the closer you get to infinity, the more you are like everything, even though one was everything in the first place. It's strange, but it's true.
Right. And
I think we shouldn't get too held up in this, by the way.
No, but there's one important point, though, is that the ending is the beginning. It's the one and the many, right? Yes. A lot of people miss this as well. It's about affirming the totality, right? Like the tarot is a dualistic system. It's not telling you that the universe is literally dualistic. It's saying it's dualistic and also one. Right, it's both. Right,
singularity.
It's about recognizing this flow again, right? Perception. You can where you put your focus. It's like divine paradox. Again, we see represented in the Fool, who is the absurdity of creation. That ridiculous equation, 0 equals 1. How do you get there, right? We don't know. It's that absurdity of life just springing into being and just taking that leap of ridiculousness. But to see that also represented in the finality too, right? In that universe, it's
Yeah.
the final recognition is that the multiplicity is the same as the Fool. The universe is the one.
There are only two cards that really actually dance, and that is the Fool and the World, or the universe, whatever you want to call them. In fact, my universe is called Cosmic Dancer or something like that. There's some little golden dawn-like attributions at the bottom that you helped me with that, as I remember, Snappy.
Right.
I passed them by you.
Yeah, we were talking about all of these attributions. Like this one is the Sovereign Guardian.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It was almost called the Sovereign. Yeah, when I do a second round of them, I'll be calling him the Sovereign. I just thought if I'm trying to get these onto market, I want people to accept them more easily. So I actually put the Emperor, but he would be called the Sovereign for me. I think that's a better title. And you were just talking about that paradox. I hope people can see that I'm trying to put the paradox in here. Like I'm coming across like he's this big, masculine, brilliant character, and he's the defender of the weak. But I'm showing you that this weak person isn't so weak. She's pretending to be weak because she's a succubus, and she's extracting from him. But I'm saying that it's not even the feminine for him. It's also an analogy for his ego, and he's a tyrant. So you can see this stacking of paradoxes to make up the whole.
Yeah, it's beautiful, wild, love it. It's a great card. Let's continue here. Your Hierophant. We did a whole video on this one, so we shouldn't spend too much time, but we should talk a bit about it, because I feel this is one of the most misunderstood cards in the deck, because it becomes associated so much with clergy and temple and authority, and that is certainly there. But I feel the most important aspect of this card is that it's Taurus in Venus, and it's that drawing of the feminine to the earth. Whereas the Emperor, right? The Emperor is that masculine drawn and brought to the earth. Now we're seeing the feminine embodied and brought to the earth, right? It's always this cycles again, right? The tarot is always in pairs of 2, and always pairs of cycles. So we saw the embodied masculine. Now we have to have the embodied feminine.
Yeah, he's drawing down this more cosmic feminine is exactly what he's doing. He's releasing himself. He's understood the earthly bonds, which is symbolized by that cube at the bottom. He's understood these earthly bonds, and he's released himself from it somewhat, maybe only mentally. Here he's doing it like astrally, as it were, and he's able to draw down this greater feminine energy, this cosmic energy, this he understands the greater rules. He's a trickster as well. Let's not get it twisted. He's
this is an expansion again, like that priestess energy, right? She's manipulating the weave. It's behind her. But now with the Hierophant, this is the one who's wielding that energy as authority, and is using that to justify his authority.
He's making batteries. Like Morpheus goes, oh, they're making batteries. That's what you are. He's making batteries. He's putting people in boxes and drawing energy from them. That's exactly what he's doing, because he's able to see this higher cosmic, and he's able to see this lower earthly. He's able to release himself from it, look into it, see that other people are still embodied in materiality, and he's able to keep them doing. He knows the doctrine. He keeps them assigned to that doctrine, and he extracts from them. Churches do it with collection plates.
Right.
I said that previously, yeah. But
there's also you're also pointing out, right? This is that energy too. Now we're starting to see, in the same time when this is that feminine energy being drawn to the earth, we're seeing this duality now, where this is both that physical and that mystical, right? Coming together in this character, where he is wielding that mystical energy in the physical realm. using that to
Wielding is,
manipulate and control, right?
yeah, wielding is the perfect word for that. Yeah. Again, we did a full video on this. If you go and look at Occult Examiner's stuff,
Yeah.
he said with breath while breathing in. Go and look at that, and you'll see me and Snappy have a really good delve into that. I would say that the Hierophant, when I understood it, was the scariest card out of the whole tarot for me. More so than Death, more so. In fact, when you delve into Death, it's one of the happier cards. When more so than the Tower, more so than the Devil. I found the Hierophant absolutely frightening.
It is kind of frightening because on one hand, right, it is this energy too of that controlling of the masculine, right? Castration and binding it and enslaving it.
Enslaving, yeah.
Right. There is this energy of learning, of teaching, of walking the path, of gaining the power. But at the same time, there is a cost there. And the Hierophant, it can be a teacher or it can be an extension, another tyrant, right?
Yeah.
Are you being enslaved or set free, right?
I mean, you can be kept in the dark, but also it's incumbent on you to wake up enough to do it. I mean, we often talk about, well, for example, at many Olympics, they tell you exactly what they're going to be doing over the next few years in that ceremony. And according to their philosophy, it's up to you to realize what they're telling you so they can that's kind of part of the deal. Oh, we told them, so cosmically, we're all right. We're in the clear. It's very dark.
Yeah. It is very dark. There is a lot of, in the Hierophant, right, it does represent old powers, old authority. And it's one of the first cards that we see in the tarot where it is actively resisting change, and it is trying to maintain. Well, the Emperor to a certain extent,
somewhat. Yeah.
The Emperor you see that to a certain extent, but you really see that on full display with the Hierophant because, again, you're bringing in that feminine energy, and that feminine energy is all about building and maintaining the foundation, where. As that masculine energy is outgoing. So this is about taking that masculine energy, putting it into the earth and putting it towards maintaining that structure, maintaining control.
And we can see this at work through the ages as, well, often he's called the Pope. In the early cards, he was the Pope. And we can see how the church has tried to maintain himself. In fact, the church is a maintenance of the Roman Empire. Just rather than doing it by might and war, they did it by doctrine and religion.
Absolutely. But
the Lovers.
Lovers is such an amazing, incredible card. Your art here is wild comparatively, because when I think, the classical art for the Lovers is pretty standardized. You usually have two people approaching a grail, and they are engaged in some kind of mixing of potions. And usually you have the animal forms of the zodiac present. Break your image down, because this is pretty radical compared to the traditional tarot.
That's a good way of putting it. So I keep all the same symbols in there to some extent. I go back a bit further. You were kind of describing later post-Marseille tradition, more the British tradition, in fact. But which is the main source of mine. I take a little from the Italian, those early cards. Then it moves into the French. I take quite a lot from the Marseille tradition, and then even more from the British tradition, and sprinkle a little of my own here. So what have I done here? Well, what is the Lovers about, really? Well, it's about the dance between the masculine and the feminine. It's that excitement of two teenagers meeting each other for the first time. It's that excitement of making choices when faced with your opposite. At its heart, this card's about initiation into the mysteries, and often you'll see what people think is an ugly woman and a beautiful woman, and a guy's got to choose. It's not really that. It's pretending to be that, but it's not. It's an old crone initiating a new couple into the mysteries of sex. Tarot is the mysteries of sex. What is the mysteries of sex? A masculine and a feminine coming together, yin and yang, fire and water. What happens when these two things start dancing about? Now, I've put it like this because I'm able to give contrasts. For example, we can see a somewhat contorted masculine and a somewhat contorted feminine. Now, how have I got this idea? When you get a very fish-eyed lens, like a 360-degree lens, it does this to the world. You know, that's how you take the photo. It shows you everything around you in a 360-degree vision. Now, really, he's looking at her. And if you juxtapose those, if you could take those two corners and fold them together, he'd be having sex with her.
Wow.
And you can see she's got her legs open and he's kind of mounting. But in another way, she's doing yoga and he's doing push-ups. You know, the yoga is the feminine exercise of the body. The using your levers and doing workouts, the masculine exercise of the body. So I've got these two diametrically opposite things going on, and that is this dance of yin and yang. I've also got lots of other things on there, but they're probably too small for Peter to point out to people. But the first card, the Sforza Visconti version of the Lovers, has two people meeting under a parasol. These two young lovers. And when you look at the parasol, it's clearly a mushroom, like clearly a mushroom. So I've put an Amanita there in the background with a kind of mercurial Eros Cupid character over the top, who's initiating the mysteries. Yeah. So that's next beautiful. next to that, also I've got, like, you'll see it when you get the card, but at the bottom of that tree, bottom of that body tree, is Buddha put into the bulb of that Amanita. And originally I had a more explicit Jesus crucified on that same Amanita cross. If anyone's ever read John Allegro's Mushroom and the Cross, or seen some of Salvador Dali's work where Jesus is crucified on an Amanita, you might get that. The mystical experience, basically, induced by drugs. Yeah. Next to that, if you look slightly to the right, you can see two people having a sword fight. In my martial art, that posture of holding a sword is called the Lovers, because it's also a wrestling grip. When you wrestle someone, you get in that same grip. It's really difficult to show you, but that's like a sword thing or wrestling. You grabbed hold of them. Now, I've actually put Terence McKenna and another guy. I had to put Terence in if there's the mushroom. So he's fighting another guy. This is taken from an alchemical image of raw mercury, brute mercury, refined mercury, and the true mercury. You'll see a third mercury, which is the guy on top of the mushroom. But these two characters facing each other. One's fearing. He's actually in the priestess pose, which is a defensive posture and very feminine. If you're in a fight, curling up and being cowardly and being feminine is not going to be very good for you. One of them is being masculine, but he's brutish. You shouldn't really be going out fighting people. And when these two things come together and annihilate each other, you get the mercury, which is above that Amanita. However, rather than just have that, again, if we fold the two corners together in the upside down at the top left-hand corner, you can see two people dancing, which are actually the Emperor. The faces, the hair, the bodies, they're the same characters. That's the Emperor and the Empress dancing, because that posture there, that Lover's posture. Let me try and get it well on camera. So there we go. That's the Lover's posture. You can imagine I've got a sword handle here and there's a sword pointing that way. Well, if I just open my arms slightly, I'm dancing with a lady in a classical dance. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah, similar. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Now, this is a really fun card and a really good way to show the similar concepts to the other tarots. So, like Crowley calls this the alchemical wedding. You're calling this the crosswise dancers.
Yes.
Can you explain that, crosswise dancers?
Okay, I think that's easy. Well, there's the yin and the yang following each other, and at this point they aren't integrating. They're not having sex there. They want to have sex, but they're not having sex. And there's actually a further analogy in here by she is Alice of Alice in Wonderland, and he's Peter of Peter Pan. You can see his hat and you can see her clothes, Alice and Peter. Oh, what's Peter? Peter Pan is a man a boy that's refusing to grow up. What's Alice? She's a young lady coming to grips with adulthood. That's what Alice in Wonderland's about. So we've got these two opposites. We've got this female acceptance of it and bewilderment by it. You know, Alice in Wonderland's completely crackers, and Peter Pan he's resisting it. You know, all the adults, the Saturnian adults in that in Peter Pan are all obsessed with time. TikTok's that Macra crocodile that'll devour you. You know.
Right. And in the earliest versions, you know, Peter Pan is a demon. He's a daimon, and he actually kills a bunch of the lost boys when they refuse to stay with him. It's a lot more darker, the original play.
Wow. Yeah, no, but he is mad. He's you know, it's that masculine energy unbound. Same with Alice though. Alice's world is crazy, and she does very little to resist it. She just goes along with it really until she pops out the other end quite by accident and not really putting any effort into it.
You know,
it just so happens that the trip ends.
Exactly. I feel like Peter Pan, he's that story of that masculine energy refusing to take responsibility and grow up.
Yes.
It's that masculine that tries to stop time, right? In many ways, it's analogous to what Christ tries to do, Jesus on the cross. He tries to turn himself into that absolute androgyne, bring heaven down to earth, stop time, and create a perpetual peaceful hierarchy. But this always ends in explosion. You know, it always ends in your own apotheosis. You cannot manifest the heaven on earth. And if you try, you wind up like Hercules ascending to the stars. You know, and that's how that cycle always happens. But again, it's
love that
attempt to fight and to resist taking responsibility, resisting growth, trying to fight against the feminine. You know, when really you're meant to embrace that feminine in the cosmic dance to create the next generation. Right? When this energy of that Pan goes to its absolute most ugliest, it becomes Saturn, the one who devours his children and literally resists generation and change in every sense, you know?
Well, in this one, if we could flip the whole thing around, but don't do it. But there's a phallic sword stuck in the ground, you know, and he's just decided to go, well, I'll put that sword away. Obviously, there's a horny factor there, but he's putting it all aside for the feminine. He's putting aside his extremes for the feminine. She does the same too. We can see the rabbit running at the bottom, that symbol of time in the bottom right-hand corner. And in opposition to that, there's a greyhound that's eternally chasing that. It's like the greyhound never gives up and the rabbit always escapes. You know, so it's this permanent chasing around of yin and yang.
Oh, yeah. So someone was asking, Ryan, if this was a suitable deck for beginners.
Yes.
Absolutely. Especially since as part of the Kickstarter, for anyone who even orders the original deck, they get your full explanation with your video series and your written text as well. Do they not?
Absolutely. Yeah, they do. And the whole thing has been designed so that it interfaces with the Western mind in this day and age, you know. Even Crowley's harks back far. He's still stuck in the 1920s, 1930s when it was made. Was it the 20s, Snappy? Is that right? Sorry, Art Deco.
Yeah, it's near the end of his life, 1910s, 1920. It doesn't come out until after both him and Lady Frieda Harris are dead, anyway. You know, and yeah, it's very much a Victorian work. Crowley does do a lot to reincorporate pagan imagery and to balance the genders, but you know there is a lot to be criticized there, and I think you do a good job in modernizing a lot of these ideas and expanding upon them in a new and interesting way without detracting from their core meaning.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the more complex cards. However, it's you could wipe it all away and just have the most simple symbols, which is there's yin and yang there, there's a male and female, and there's two opposites, there's a night and day. You can kind of just intuitively tell what's going on. There's nothing in these cards that wouldn't make sense if you read any explanation of this tarot card.
Yep. You can read any standard. If you went online and just searched the lovers, the attributions for that lovers card, though basic, would apply to Ryan's card. Absolutely. And that's important because you want to have that universality.
It's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to make every card so it's easily understood, but then it explains itself to the nth degree, keeps on going down and down and down, but doesn't make it complex or too confusing.
Right. Like I'm usually hypercritical of a lot of those beginner sources that say things like, the lover's card is procreation. It's the alchemical wedding. It's joy, and gives you all those buzzwords. But these are a very basic way to start to understand. And if that's your initial understanding of the tarot and you go to these introduction books, you can apply them to Ryan's. But if you dig deeper and you listen to the stuff that Ryan's talking about, you'll uncover additional layers, right?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever disagreed with anything you said ever on tarot. So you can listen to anything that Snappy says as well, and it will be in these cards, I promise.
There you go. All right, let's continue. I'm really enjoying this. Oh, the Hermit. This is one of my favorite cards. Very, very complex Virgo energy. Looking at your Hermit right away, there's a couple interesting things here that are a bit different than the classical that I would love you to unpack. This imagery of the necklace that he's wearing, that's a bit different. And then you have the addition of the raven. What are your thoughts on these? Okay,
so hermits, classically, one of the symbols of hermits, especially in the Christian tradition, is a skull of death, a timepiece, and a raven bringing him bread that he eats. What's raven's bread? Well, it's Amanita muscaria mushrooms, and that raven is swooping in with an Amanita muscaria mushroom.
Also, I didn't notice that. Wow.
Yeah, I've got it in a kind of a brain analogy. The way its wings are up, it's showing two hemispheres of a brain. So there's I don't want to get too deep into all these cards, but yeah, that's that essentially. The raven is Mercury, the messenger, bringing manna from heaven, kind of an idea. It might be the Amrita of meditation. It might be your drug dealer bringing you a new substance that happens to hit you well that night. It might be the mushrooms you find in the field. It might be inspiration you get from a new book. It's messages it's the ability to message and give messages to the gods.
Well, it's also like this hermit energy too. To me, it really connects to that energy of like the goddess Demeter. Specifically, I think of that story of searching for her lost daughter who got abducted. It's this searching inside the self, shining the light, doing that hard work of self-reflection, but also in the earth, right? It's this learning, but a solitary learning, removing yourself from the world to do that hard work of reflection and refinement. And I'm sure this is intentional. I just noticed on the bottom of your lantern, you have the Saturn square. Is that correct?
Yeah, Snappy, I don't want to go into everything. I can't, that's a whole podcast in itself. But yes, that's a Saturn square.
But yeah, so Hermit is great. That energy of shining a light. I love that you have the Asclepius staff too here.
Yeah. So I can talk about that necklace that he's got on.
True.
So that's the Orphic egg and the serpent wrapped around it, which is the soul of the world, and that is that. But basically, it's that it's difficult living here. You've got life and death to struggle with, and it makes you do it. You've got no choice. Either adapt or die, as Snappy so philosophically says. And that's that. Essentially, that's what he's doing. He's going inside to adapt himself. How inside? Well, he's in a cave at the top of a mountain. That's how inside he is. He's ascended to the top. He got there. He saw the view and decided he needs to go into the depths. It's Gandalf at the top of Mount Moria, or whatever it's called, going into those mines and he's about to meet the Balrog and be changed from Gandalf the Grey into Gandalf the White.
Yep, facing those inner demons. Beautiful.
To that's an adapted Ian McKellen face.
I kind of can see it now that you pointed out.
I actually right. So here's what I did. I took Dumbledore's face from Harry Potter and sculpted it into Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen's from my town, by the way, from Bolton.
Oh, that's wild.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just want to point out too, like I love this, the image of the egg with the snake, or the staff with the snake, a pillar with a snake, a tree with a vine. This is as primordial as you get in the Western tradition, right?
Yeah.
It's the feminine and the masculine together. It's you also see it in the Indian tradition with the lingam. It's this idea of unchanging time and then that erotic energy spiraling around it, causing it to change. You know,
Yeah.
there's a self that doesn't want to change, but it's forced to change by the constriction of that snake, that necessity. In the Orphic tradition, they would say that it's Ananki is the snake, necessity, and the egg is Chronos, is time itself,
And
right?
this is how the universe was born.
Yep.
You're only missing inevitability. That's all you're missing from that, that first trinity that births the universe.
Yep. And
And
that
there is a
inevitability in
symbol
the
of the
Greek.
universe in the snake and the egg.
Yep. And that symbol of the inevitability in the Greek is darkness, chaos, the gap, or nix, the night itself,
Yeah.
right? Or
And he's in the
hecatomb,
dark. He's in the
right?
dark, being illuminated by that same light given off by Saturn, hence the Saturn square on the bottom of the lamp. And if you look closely at that, it's bright in the lamp, but there's actually still structure to the lamp itself, and it's a Saturn. It's the sigil of Saturn, which is special angles, basically. But
Yeah,
yes, it's
yeah,
all
I know
here.
what you're talking about though. It's that triangle point.
Yeah.
The other wild thing too with this is that Saturn is the sun in the underworld, and the
Yes.
Hermit is the card of going into the underworld and shining a light into your interior, into your soul.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And seeing what's there. I often call Virgo the librarian of the zodiac, and that's because I mean, just in a basic, astrology sense, Virgos are like that. They're very anal and meticulous and analytical, and that's what he's doing. He's going inside and analyzing by the light of the black sun, which is that Saturnian sun, as you said. That black sun is the light of your dreams, or the light that isn't light, and it's also the light that lights the sun before it became sunlight. It's the
Yeah.
energy itself.
The primordial light, right?
Primordial light, yes.
Beautiful. Wow. Let's continue here. Okay, the wheel.
Yeah.
This is one of the more
So,
esoteric cards in the deck.
yes, one of the most. Maybe one we should mostly skip. As I'd like to go into this as itself, but I will note that a lot of people think that it's a medieval thing and just like a philosophy of life. You're on top of the wheel of fortune. At some point, you'll be flung off at the bottom. If you can keep hold of it, you'll come back round again. Don't worry about it. Good times, bad times. This is life. However, on a much deeper level, the biggest secrets of the tarot in here, ones we've previously discussed on the very first. It was the second time we ever spoke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is indicated by the fact there's a sphinx at the top. What is a sphinx? It's a lion, a bull, an eagle, and a man. The four directions. Timelessness. Ionic life. Need I say more? Let's continue.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. All right. You did, Fortuna, the wheel, is a bitch. We'll say that. Justice.
Okay. So I like this card because it actually inspired me to make my court cards, which I put a positive and a negative of each. It's essentially split into two halves. If the court card was positive, that's the top. Negative, the bottom. Here, it's justice. And the major two parts of this are justice itself, which is the balance and scaling and making sure everything's fair, and being blind but not really, so she's got a bit of a veil over her eyes, but you can still see her eyes. And the underside of that, on the earliest tarot, you would the very bottom half of the card would have a female knight on a horse, because it's one thing saying, oh, this is fair or this is not fair, we need to do something about it. Somebody needs to go and do something about it. Somebody needs to do the dirty work. So on mine, it's this serpentine lady beneath her, which as well, when you look at most statues of the embodied justice, Themis, she's stood on a serpent, and that's your animal desire for revenge. Here, it's a curtailed, philosophical, necessary revenge. as you know, any punishment from the state is a philosophically valid revenge
Well,
if
there's
everything's
also,
going right.
there's something to be said to that, right? One of the painful things that people need to recognize in the universe is that the universe is not fair, and that if you do not defend yourself, it will attack you, and
Yes.
you will be consumed. It's just an inevitability, right? It's one of these things that happens, and there is justice in the defense and protection of your will and of yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
So this is a very human idea. If you look to nature, as Snappy just described nature, nature's justice is might makes right. All over nature, that's the law. However, the human law is that we can, as Crowley puts it, adjust. We can adjust to what nature throws at us, and we can adjust according to our philosophy, adjudicate, and give our judgments accordingly. Judgment
Right.
comes further down the line, but she's justice. She's at least the attempt, as flawed as we are as humans, to make it right.
Again, we're seeing this Hermes principle, right? That magician principle, that reason refined even further. Now, this is that power on display of being able to move between the poles, to make your decision left or right from an act of reason. That adjustment is that ability to see multiple perspectives and to chart a course, right? And that is what justice truly is, the attempt to do what is right, the attempt to
Yes.
walk correctly, to see things as they are. But it's also understood that this is an impossibility in the real world,
Yeah. And the image we have, the icon we have in nature. Well, we've already discussed the icon to some extent in the Lover's card, that yin-yang principle. Well, this exists in nature too, at the very base of matter, in plasma. And this is, if you know what a toroidal form is, it's like a donut shape. And it's got a curve out of the top, and it comes back around and loops on itself. Let me do a small one so everyone can see it. So it's got a donut shape. There's two parts to it. There's a ring of a donut there, and then between that, like Kundalini style stuff, or an apple core, it comes out, goes around, loops back around on itself, and comes in again at the bottom. You'll see on photos of people's aura, she is depicting that plasma toroid ring that is the base structure of all of reality. This card for me goes so deep, and I've put so much into it, but you wouldn't know it was there unless I told you. So if you get the deck, come and watch the videos, because a lot of these cards go deeper than even me and Snappy are talking about now.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, another reason why you should check out Ryan's deck for sure. Let's check out the Hangman a bit. We did do a deep dive into this, but the Hangman is one of the most controversial and disputed and argued about cards in the deck.
It's because nobody knows what bloody star sign, what constellation it is. And I worked it out. It's Cygnus. It's Cygnus. Orpheus turned into Cygnus. It's the ugly duckling transforming. It's a cocoon. You can figure this stuff out. One of my favorite things about this is that it's the same as the story of Odin sacrificing himself on the ash tree, and you figure out that that ash tree is the Milky Way going up, and at the top of the Milky Way is Cygnus dipping his head into what's called the Dark Rift. Well, what does the Hangman do? He dips his head into water. There's so many different variations, but he's always hung on a tree. He's always somewhat sacrificing himself. And as soon as you figure out that it is Cygnus, and that image of the Hangman fits perfectly over the constellation of Cygnus.
Right. We also get a lot of this is primordial symbolism that takes on a lot of different levels. And I think a lot of it has been, I wouldn't say corrupted, but has been deeply influenced by the Christian tradition, so that some of the more earlier esoteric ideas have been lost. And it's not to say that the Christian tradition isn't valid. It's that they're expanding it in a different direction. You know, like if we look at the Greek tradition, the earliest version of this image you'll see is Odysseus. Odysseus, he hangs himself upon the mast of his ship so that he can perceive and listen to the sirens without being destroyed by them. You know, and so there's an implication too upon the hangman that gets lost, I feel, where you have to go through the hanging. You're meant, you know, part of the journey is being stuck upon the tree and suffering through the experience, experiencing death, experiencing the pain, gazing at the monstrous. You know, Odin rips out his eye, right? And he goes through the transformation to gain the feminine magic and to see the powers of life and death. It's like there's an actual sacrifice that happens. He loses part of himself and he goes on there for an extended period of time, right?
So to that, I mean, this for me is Odin, and I've messed his eyes up in that way. By the way, Jesus on the cross is Cygnus as well. He's going through that transformation from Ugly Duckling into Swan. Odin himself is depicted on Mjolnir, the Thor's hammer, which is an upside down mushroom. He's a swan puking up the universe into existence. Again, we got this Swan Cygnus idea. I'd also note that on that Thor's hammer idea, saying it's an Amanita mushroom, I've got an Amanita there floating, and that's because you see in all these old traditions, especially in the Germanic tradition, that Arthur's court were the Swan Knights. You got the Lady in the Lake who's associated with the swan as well. And obviously we just said Odin the swan. Orpheus, he turns into a swan at some point. Isn't it? It's something to do with Cygnus. Can't quite remember. Well,
Zeus German is the swan, right? And he comes down and blesses Orpheus. Orpheus gets ripped apart by the Maenads from failing. Yeah. But anyway,
for liking boys. So old German for mushroom is Schwamm. Old German for swan is Schwamm.
Oh wow!
So that's the analogy they're making. And if you imagine a swan diving down into the water, which is what Cygnus is, that looks exactly the same as the mushroom in the bottom left there, just floating around in the. It's the same image over and over again, the same thing.
Yeah, and I just want to point out your card here because I really love the art a lot. I love the eye reflected in the tree and this perspective of being dipped into the water. And then his hair transforming into the roots. It's beautiful.
Roots, yeah, and then we can see the branches of the tree have been cut off. We can see the zodiac signs left behind in each of those stumps. I've taken that from another tarot card that I saw. But what's that? Well, it's parts of you being cut off, because if you're sacrificing yourself, you're giving up time, you're giving up ego, you're giving up your wants, you're giving up sex, you're giving up all these human urges, and then you can enter this mystical realm because there's nothing else there to be concentrating on. It's mysticism.
I love it. And then the snake tongue, and the inverted hangman. There's so much going on.
That tongue is actually a swan's beak, because I saw in some of the early Marseille cards that if you look at his hands that are tied behind his back, they're actually fingers sticking up behind him, behind his back there. And it's like, well, if he had his hands tied behind his back at the bottom, his fingers wouldn't stick out the top. I realized they were feathers, and he had his tongue stuck out, and I realized it was a beak. It's because he's turning into a swan.
Beautiful. Wow, love it. Amazing, Ryan. Amazing. Connecting it to Cygnus clearly. Love it.
Yeah.
Let's continue here.
Death. to me, he's a rock star. It's Jimi Hendrix. He's doing the dance macabre and making life do its dance through death and fermentation, as it would be in the alchemical tradition. He's killing it so it can live again. And come on, snap it. There's nothing too different in my death card, apart from the fact that I realised that he is. When you look at the tradition, he's actually Ophiuchus and Scorpio and Aquila, and often you'll see the bird Aquila up in the top left, the scorpion down at the bottom. This is Crowley's card, does it as well? Actually, there's a scorpion at the bottom, a big bird in the top left. I've slightly changed it, but it's the same sense.
For sure. And that death card is really about the inevitability of transformation. And that statement, right? If you do not adapt, you will be forced to adapt. You will all will be brought low and forced to go through these transformations in order to ensure cycles of evolution and growth, right? And death is the arbitrator. He's that force that ensures that things don't stagnate, that there's constant change and variation, and it is painful energy to deal with, but it always brings transformation and growth. The key with death is to recognize that he's inevitable and to prepare. If you die before you die, you don't die when you die.
Yeah, I love that. Isn't that above a cave somewhere, a monastery or something?
It is. It's in one of the caves near Lucis that's written.
So there's phallic energy. That I would want to give away one little secret, if that's all right.
Sure.
So in the tarot, we see two towers. You'll see it in Lord of the Rings as well. You see it on the moon card in the tarot. Well, here are the two towers, right? So one of them is Ophiuchus. You got to understand it in astrotheology. Imagine being around a campfire in prehistoric times. There's no TV. You tell each other stories. And a good way to tell the stories is by what's going on in the year, because it makes sense to be there at this time of year. And you look up at the stars. And that pattern of stars might be one character in one story, and then you look slightly right, and then the character's doing something else, and you look further over, and the character's doing something else with some other characters. It's just a way to tell the stories. These things stuck to some extent, but it's a way to tell the story. So Ophiuchus is the healer of the zodiac. He's like the higher magician, as it were, and he stands at one side of something special. And at the other side of it is Orion. He's the other tower. It's saying that the characters changed somewhat. So you got Ophiuchus and Orion. They look somewhat similar as constellations. Between them, you've got a silver and a golden gate. One's the path that souls enter into incarnation, and another one's the one that they leave via. Now, this is an analogy for mysticism. People might have believed it to some extent, but the priest didn't, because they were the guys making this shit up. Do you know what I mean? If I'm making up the story, I know damn well it's not real. So it's an analogy for a mystery, for to do something. And if you look between these two towers, there's a path in the sky of a very bright part of the Milky Way. In fact, at the beginning of it here, represented by, you can see, if you look behind his bottom, there's like a little bit of light, and there's actually a diver, because he's at the bottom of the ocean. There's a diver swimming in to go and begin its journey through the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, that's named after this. And it's a path up the brightest part of the Milky Way. That brightest part is pointed to by Sagittarius pointing his arrow, and that's galactic center. At this point, it crosses over with Scorpio. At the other point, it actually crosses between Scorpio and Sagittarius. At the other point, it crosses over between Gemini and Taurus. You'll see this signaled in Mithraism by Cortes and Cortopates. One holds his torch up, the other holds his torch down. One's represented by Taurus, the other's represented by Scorpio. So it's all to do with mysticism and drugs and mushrooms and things like that. But there's so much in the zodiac, and there's so much in these cards.
Yeah,
without going into it too deeply.
And that pillar stuff and the Great Mother between the pillars, you see that everywhere. This is some of the oldest symbolism you'll see, period. I often think of that image. There's the famous one of Ereshkigal, where she has the two rings. Or there's the famous one in, in Phoenicia, where you'll see the goddess between the two pillars, the stele, which becomes the pillars of Hercules, famously. Yeah. That's where the myth comes from.
It also comes from, it's also in the myth of Gilgamesh when he slaughtered, and Enkidu when they slaughtered the bull. It's right. In there. Well, again, that's a stream that follows straight through to Mithraism. Look, you can find Taurus defined exactly as it looks now on cave walls.
Yeah. Well, that story you see everywhere. You'll see it You'll see the same story of the bowl with Zeus and Io. You see it, like you said, with Enkidu. You see it with Osiris and Isis in Egypt. It's like it's a primordial thing of this Mediterranean world, you know. And everywhere is talking about these pillars, that great mother between them, flipping the poles, working between them. The one works for 3 years, one goes for 2. It's like you see this constant, you know, and it's some ancient primordial thing.
Yeah, but it's the deepest of secrets, this. It's not like, you know, it's the things that we're only just realizing now. It's not like there's a through line and people know this stuff. It's up to the likes of me and Snappy to work this stuff out. I'm sure Crawley and the likes have known this, but they didn't talk about it. They might have hinted at it a little bit, but they never talked about it.
It's deep mystery. It's deep mystery, right? And, you know, part of the magic is in not telling people, you know? And it's one of these things, right? Like within the Western tradition, you know, we still have a lot of what you see in the Eastern tradition, right? You know, like in many ways, it's an arbitrary distinction, East and West, you know? And in the Eastern tradition, there's this whole form of enlightenment which comes from exploration of paradox, right? You see this represented in the Buddhist tradition explicitly in the tradition of koans, right? Like, what is the sound a tree makes in the woods if no one's around, right?
One hand clapping.
Yeah, what is the sound of one hand clapping? That one doesn't really work, but you know, they give you these.
It sounds like fapping.
But they give you these paradoxical riddles because the point is to force your mind to overcome this, right? And in the Western tradition, this is what we were talking about when we were talking about the satires and the satirists and these mystery schools. If people just tell you the answer, you've not gone through the journey of getting the answer, right? If I just tell you that the universe is one and many and we're all connected, it means absolutely nothing. It just sounds like hippie bullshit, right?
It is.
Right? But if you were to experience that, that's why, like, one of the most famous stories of one of these forms of enlightenment comes from the Lotus Sutra, where the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, one of his students comes up to him and is like, I can't grasp what you're talking about. It's nonsense. I see everyone listening. I don't think I can ever achieve enlightenment. And the Buddha goes, here, I'll explain it to you. And he walks into a lake. He takes a lotus in his hands. He walks up to the man, and then the flower blooms in his hand. And that perception of the blooming, he achieved enlightenment like that. He understood, because it's something that's innate to ourselves. It's about knowing the self, right? And if I just tell you the answer, it doesn't mean anything if you haven't explored yourself.
Yeah, if you haven't done the work in the first place, yeah.
Right?
It can be helpful, though, to be told the answer, as we've talked about previously. Sometimes mostly it's in the question.
Yeah. Absolutely, right? And you see some of the funniness put on display in a lot of various literature. One of my favorite books,
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
What is the answer?
Were you really going to say that?
Yeah.
You really? Whoa! Oh my!
Love that book. Love those books so much. Read them really young, but that blew my mind when it was like they got the answer and it was 42. And then they're like, "Well, what is the fucking question?" You know, we were asking the wrong question the whole time.
Yeah.
What's really funny with that? Okay, my dad is an engineer, super nerdy, and that was one of these books he gave to me and was like, "You need to read this." And after I read this, he told me a secret. And he says that in computer binary, 42 corresponds to the tilde key or the any key. It's representative of anything. It's that placeholder in computer science that means anything. So what was the answer to life, the universe, and anything and everything? Anything.
Anything.
Right?
Wow.
It is
I like the sound of your dad. You've told me a few stories about your dad. Sounds like a top guy.
Oh, he's awesome. He's a very interesting character. Brilliant, but also like very, very old school in science, kind of very opposite to me in many ways, but beautiful, you know?
Yeah.
But let's continue here. This is fun. Maybe we do one more, then let's watch your video. We'll go through your Kickstarter and we'll call it.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
So temperance, again, this is a slight divergence from the classical, but it's certainly insinuated by the likes of Crowley's card. Well, go on, Snappy, if you tell us what temperance is, and I'll tell you why I've put it this way.
Well, you know, I mean,
it's alchemy.
Yeah, it's you know, I really love Crowley's art card because I feel that the art it's far better than temperance. It's this card to me is intrinsically related to the lovers, where the lovers, like you said, is that dance where the masculine and feminine are like, are we gonna have sex? This card, it's funny that it's called temperance because this is the act of lovemaking itself, right? This is the coming together of forms to create something new. This is that if the one is the wedding, this is the consummation, you know? And really this is about bringing together things, balancing them out to create something new, doing that alchemical work.
And so to that, we have the Kabbalistic emanations of the tree of life, which are going from a point at the top and kind of bringing each other into existence by the fact that there's a positive, then there's got to be a negative, then that becomes the positive to the next negative, and then we keep getting these emanations, and this guy's essentially balancing them all. It's tough to see, but he's actually androgynous. He's got boobs. If you look, he's got boobs, and he's wearing lipstick and eyeshadow.
I see the lipstick for sure.
Yeah. But I wanted to keep it subtle, so I hid the lipstick in the lighting, and you know, I wanted to explore this card. So yeah, he's doing alchemy. Alchemy is an internal or external thing. Externally, it became chemistry, famously in physics. Internally, that art's not often understood in the West, but it is in things like Kundalini yoga and Taoism in the East. It's all over the place, but it's an internal work, and that's the quickest way to put it, really. What is tempering? Well, it's like a sword. You can make steel, and it won't quite it'll look fine, but it won't have the properties you need it to have in order for it to be taken to battle. Well, you need to hammer it in certain places. It needs to be brought up to certain temperatures, which the old blacksmiths would see by the eye. You know, famously Japanese swordsmiths would say, when it gets to the color of dawn, then you take it out and put it into water, put it in again, let it become of the nature of a drunken cheek, take it out again, douse it in water, hammer it out. It's got to be tempered. And so too with the alchemical operations, it's a perfect balance. We can see how hard he's concentrating in order to get this work done. He's also showing that this is actually a map of the body in the way he's got it in front of his body, and everything's in its right place. Like the purple sphere at the bottom is Yesod on the tree of life, and that's to do with the genitals. But that area isn't really at the genitals. It's slightly above, underneath the belly button. Something I talk about quite often. But yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's magic, right? Temperance, like you said, it's that process of refinement, but it's also that bringing together of the two poles, of the masculine and the feminine. This is gazing at the other, whatever that other is for you, and it's a lot more new. I feel like a lot of people have struggled with this because the gendered energies are different than your sexuality and your sex. You know, you will meet, there are people who are masculine who struggle with the masculine and are totally balanced in their feminine, but they are physically masculine. And there are women who have no connection to the feminine, but are totally balanced in their masculine. You know, you need to find that other and what that represents for you and balance these forces out in your interior self, you know, and understand that it's the drive to will and to self and to create and to force is that masculine energy. That desire to go inward, to listen, to reflect, and to create is that feminine. And we are both of these energies in variation.
Yes.
There is no person who is absolutely that masculine or that feminine. And we need to do the work of bringing these together in harmony in that dance.
And you can do that through the masculine empiricism of technique and knowing what you're doing and having been there before, and the feminine attribute of play, the most important, I think, personally. And by playing and having fun and seeing, and wanting to investigate, and then you'll find out.
Exactly, right. And it's and again, this temperance energy is also this energy of also communicating with the highest self, right? So much of the tarot, the purpose of the tarot is to communicate with what I call the muse, or what Crowley called the holy guardian angel, or the true will, right? It's this idea of there is an aspect of you that has gone through the process of creation, that has achieved ionic life, that exists outside of time. And we need to just recognize ourselves as that person. And there's an unfolding of this conversation that happens internally. And drawing down the star and all of this process, in many ways, is about connecting to that higher self and bringing yourself into refinement with that divine self,
We can see that's exactly what he's doing. He's got hold of that uppermost, and he's just trying to pour it just enough so it doesn't destroy him or overtake him, or that there's enough so he can tell what it is. And it takes effort from beneath. He's putting his own energy in that fire at the bottom, which, by the way, is coming from a skull. But we get too deep into it there. But yeah, he's absolutely, as Snappy's channel is, he's drawing down those stars, those higher parts of ourselves, those things that are us but are in some ways beyond us.
Right. And it's in the magical process is reflecting upon these, right? The 9 planets are these primordial forces that can be reflected upon. Amazing.
And they are you, they make up you, and always they're always in you. There's nothing that isn't you in this system. So again, there's something of the Kundalini thing and the chakra here, showing that the Kabbalistic tree of life is your body.
Yep. And we're also seeing a lot of that. Go ahead, sorry.
No, sorry, Snappy.
I was just going to say, and we're seeing the Hermetic principle on display. That which is above is the same as that which is below.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I prefer this card to be called art, or for me, I gave them all names. So rather than it being an abstraction like art, it would have been the artist. I wanted to call him the alchemist. And I think he's still, I can't quite read it, the alchemist of the
opposites. That's a great title for him. It's a perfect, or for them, it's a perfect title, right?
Yeah.
Because they are mixing those opposites and creating something new and confronting the other. Temperance is that it really makes me think too, in the Indian tradition, we have this on display with the myths of Shiva and Parvati. Parvati has this magic mirror, and Shiva, by lusting and engaging with Parvati, he can see himself reflected in her mirror. And the more he tastes and he gazes at her, the more he sees himself. And through coming together of these two forces, eventually they merge into one being, Adranahari Ishvara. So even though she is his reflection, they are one and the same. And it's that act of play and lovemaking that allows this unity to happen.
In alchemy, we call this coagulation. There are so many stages depending on what tradition you're looking at, but it's coagulation, the coming together, the fusing and binding and correct mixing. Coagulation. Yep. Strange word, but a good one.
Amazing. So let's check out your Kickstarter here for a little bit. And is there anything you want people to know about what you're doing here with your?
Not really. I think we've pretty much explained everything. I do have some other bits. We've made a cool box, which if you scroll down a little bit, we can see.
Yes, this is a really exciting.
The cool box. It basically, you wave a magic ring over the top, it unlocks, you pull the lid off and it folds out, and you can take your cards out and do your spread. It'll fit pretty much any deck, right? As long as it's not one of those really long ones. but it's particularly made for my deck.
And it's perfect for doing the Celtic Cross or Saturn Square readings. So it's a fun little addition.
You can do the Saturn Square reading still. You just take up the blank spaces as well as the spaces that are filled in. But that it gives you something as well. You've got polarities there. Then that's what I call the Wheel of Life. It's like a Wheel of Light. Sorry, it's a decoder wheel for everything. Like everything's concentrated into that. You wouldn't need a tarot deck if you dropped a pebble on there. You could select your card easily and understand where it's coming from in the Wheel of the Year.
And this is offered as like a high quality poster, right? That people can get, or is it
as a poster? You can have it as a cloth, or possibly a bit further down. If I start to make my money up, it can be like a big mouse mat.
Amazing.
Doing your spreads on. Those are 4 elemental relics, as we call them. A wand, a sword. They're all quite big. I got one here. That's it. So they're pretty big. I mean, this one's in golden ratio to me. It's as big as my forearm up to my fingers. Wow. And it's designed with a special pattern that I found in the tarot, and it's really cool. It's actually based on a parrying dagger from old medieval martial arts. I always get the camera mixed up.
That's so cool.
But these things are big. Yeah. So if you bought the one on its own, it's like probably about $20, something like that, £18. But if you bought the set, it's just about $50, something like that. I don't know. I can't quite do the calculation. 45 English pounds. So you get a lot of money off if you get them together.
Of course. And yeah, just amazing stuff. We didn't get into these, but you have some really fun cards here. Like you use Captain Kirk as your Knight of your Knight of Wands, your King of Wands, which is perfect.
I'd like to say he just looks like Captain Kirk. That isn't actually Captain Kirk. He just looks like him. You know what I'm saying?
Right. For legal reasons, this is the distinct character from your own fantasy. Amazing. But it's
Captain
cool.
Bert.
Right?
Yeah.
Captain Bert. Right. Beautiful. More of your cards on display here.
Yeah. So you can see all the cards. You can see a few close-ups. You can see this pattern that I discovered in the tarot. I give you an example there of is it the Oswald Worth, 17th century, 18th century
yes, one? That's correct.
If we go down, we can see where that same pattern defines all the shafts and everything in the pyramids and makes up the pyramid. You go down another one. That's the Nama tablet, like the oldest Egyptian artifact we have. That's clearly made with it beautifully. It's easy to see that one too.
Amazing.
And that's the cave wall 45,000 years ago that I found this same pattern, and is a depiction of Taurus. So just shows you how old this stuff is. And yeah, I've almost finished a book that I abandoned to finish the tarot on all this stuff, on this pattern, because I also found it on some old pillars with the Sator square on it.
Oh wow! Yeah, we need to do a deep dive into your Saturn Square stuff, and and you should definitely write this book, because that book will be awesome. This is really cool too. You have it in purple or in black. I think you said it was 10 extra pounds to get it in purple, but it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm afraid like these aren't the cheapest things, but I'm not an industrial strength manufacturer. You know, I'm just a guy, so I've got to get these produced, and because we're not getting hundreds of thousands produced, they're a little more expensive. But I've put so much more time in than normal tarot card producers. You know, these are so much deeper than normal tarot that you're going to get. So
right, what are you going to do? Buy a repressing of the Rider-Waite or Kawaii Cat Tarot for $20?
Yeah.
Or, if you fork out this, I purchased it. For me, it came out to roughly 100 Canadian. So this would be around like 85, 90 USD. That is standard for a high quality tarot deck. It's not expensive, but it's not cheap either. This is what you should expect to pay for something that's high quality, I feel, especially with, these are all laminated, right? They're really high quality cardstock you were showing. Right. So it's what you expect, I think. Anyone who's into collecting the tarot will recognize that $100 threshold is sort of the standard. So, and you have amazing stuff like this, like these posters.
Yeah, you can have a poster. If you can pick any of the major arcana, and I'll sign it for you if you want me to sign it, even though I'm not anybody. But I'll sign it for you if you want that. Yeah, there's another. Yeah, you can have a little bag if you want one of those. There's a big t-shirt. Yeah, keep going. I'll just show you. We got out. So there's this. So we wanted to have something ridiculous on there as well. If anybody wanted to buy something ridiculous. So this is a handmade. All the resin products and all the wood products are totally handmade by me. And this one has 2 sections in it, all felt lined. If it has the magnetic ring thing again, and when you put the magnetic ring over the top, it lights up with that wheel of light, the decoder wheel from before, built into the top of it. It looks gorgeous.
Amazing.
And then I've just given you everything the magician might need, from dowsing rods to a cauldron, a voodoo puppet doll, a sealing wax, a signet ring, gemstones, scrolls, a scrying mirror, everything. It ain't cheap, however, but it's fairly priced and handmade.
If you are looking for a complete magician's kit, if you're interested in doing ritual magic with the tarot, like I do, utilizing the tarot as sort of a divine temple, this is everything you could possibly need, and it's an amazing setup. You know, this kind of stuff, these kind of tools, really do help you put yourself into the mindset in the space of doing ritual magic. You know, it's not necessary, but it's something that is helpful and beautiful and will add to your experience if you choose to invest in it.
It's that fun part of the temperance we're talking about. There's the empiricism, and there's knowing it and knowing how to do it and doing it properly. But then there's the fun part of having the tools and, you know, making
the art, right? Being a wizard, being a magician is being artistic and creative.
Getting the wand and then going, abracadabra. It feels good. It feels good. Right?
We all want to draw our universal hexagram. Do you want to be sitting there sky clad with your finger, or would you rather be decked out like a wizard?
Exactly. It's fun. Amazing. It's lots of fun.
It's lots of fun, right? It's a cool thing. But yeah, this is an amazing thing you got here. We have Medea. We didn't get to strength, but you have Medea's, your strength card, which I absolutely love. And yeah, it's such a fun little thing you got going here. Let's take a look at this video.
Oh, that's not the video, Snappy. That's a previous episode.
Right. Okay. I have the video here. If I go to this screen, sorry. Cool. So yeah, we can watch this video here. Are you cool to watch this?
Me? Yeah, I'm in it.
Okay. I just want to. Where is that? Oh yeah, there's the button. Sorry. Not the most tech savvy person here. Here we go.
Just check the volume level for me. Just turn the volume down just a little bit, because I think it was blowing out last time.
Okay.
That's it.
Yes, fellow Taromancer. So you've summoned me, Ryan 7, here to speak of hidden esoteric knowledge. That secret fire kept burning within these bewitching cards. The art of the craft is in the exquisite symbols. Every symbol deciphered, every mystery unveiled, provokes an ever-deepening feeling that tarot are even more than we already understand. It's a gift from our ancestors, a book of life, the power to transform, where the wave of a wand can conduct the cosmic orchestra itself. Tarot is true magic. I delved into the depths of Tarot's myriad of mysteries. 11 years of vigilant research. I compared and contrasted the countless decks and myths, traced the deep history of the ideas, poured myself into the artwork. My own, a collage of thousands of repainted photographs, intense with colour, vibrating with meaning. On the way, I connected with other taromancers, history lovers, and occult weirdos, made some documentaries, loved the hard work and what the symbols did for my soul. Eventually, I made discoveries that blew my mind, including a hidden template of cosmic geometry, a treasure kept by many masters, used since the dawn of time. Inspired to craft something special using these same wonders, I made these 4 relics, the 4 elements, the effects of the magician. Modernized art to the ancient tradition. Simple yet detailed. Layered with the wisdom of the archetypes, numeric metaphysics, the trivium and quadrivium, the psychology of the zodiac, sacred geometry, energy alchemy, shamanic journeying, Kabbalistic cosmic order, the music of the spheres, the secret of space and freaking time. I've put everything I have into this. I can't wait to show you what I found in these enchanting cards. See you soon. Abracadabra.
The secret of space and freaking time. And it is in there. That's the thing, everybody. It's not some weird bullshit. It is in there.
Yep. You want to know how to reach that center pillar, how to go through the middle path and achieve ionic life? Well, all of the diagrams are given to you here. All of the tools are on display. Right now, can you go through the process? Can you temper yourself like steel? Is the question.
You're good at this job, Snappy. You really are.
Beautiful. But this was so much fun, Ryan. Thank you for coming and sharing your incredible tarot with us. Is there anything you want to leave our audience with? Any final messages or words or thoughts about this, like your life creation at this point?
Yeah, it is the work of my adult life, basically. I don't think I put any effort into anything more than this. Look, everything that me and Snappy ever talk about, anything even Amon talks about, it's all in here. This is literally the whole of the Western tradition. I've not found anything outside that's not in here, in its most necessary form. Anything. So if you want to know, there's a reason why folk like me and Snappy are so attracted to it. And if you want to know, and if you don't know, it's time to start learning. And this is the best way I've ever found of learning.
Beautifully said, right? All of the tarot are gateways and are the keys.
The keys.
Now time for you to walk through it. Ryan has given you the keys. Can you open the gates? Beautiful.
I'm walking with you as well, guys. So, I'll be here for your journey.
That's the other thing. Ryan has all this incredible content that you made, right? I'm looking really forward to the series of videos that you produced with this, and they're all high quality. You're going to go into depth with it. So it's not like other tarot where you're just getting some kind of stale book and you're getting other people's ideas. This is your personal exploration and deep dive.
Yes. Well put.
All right. Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This was so much fun. Please go support Ryan. His Kickstarter is pinned here in the live chat. You can find it in the description. And I would suggest you go to Ryan's YouTube, but it's down for the moment. In the meantime, come join us on Myth and Lore Discord. Ryan has his own tab there, and you can keep up to date with everything that's going on with him, his tarot, and any new projects. Is there anything else you're working on in the meantime, or this is the main focus for now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the internal work myself. I've advanced that, and I've started really actually properly doing alchemy now, and that's starting to have some results. So I'll start to share that with everybody quite soon. But The next thing I'm going to do is have a rest, because it takes a long time to do 78 illustrations at that detail, make all these discoveries, put all those things together, then get the Kickstarter together, then have Kickstarter reject it because it's messed up, do it again, messed up again, do it again, launch the thing early, have to chase things. But guys, please come, because this project is the first of a few I want to do. As I said before, my next project, I want to work with Snappy and do a Greek tarot. So
and I'm working on this big time. We have some really cool ideas. I already have all the cards I thought out in my head. I'm going to do all of the source work. So the idea with this Greek tarot is that it's really going to be an unfolding of the temple. All of the major arcana are going to correspond to deities. All of the 12 Olympians are going to be representative. All of the chthonic deities will be there. And it's really going to try to connect you to the mythic stories. All of the minor cards are going to be ideas taken from the myths. So it's really about absorbing you into that Hellenic tradition from a modern approach. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So please come and support me, and you'll be supporting the whole endeavor. And maybe one of you guys will have an idea that we want to take on board, and we'll do that too.
Exactly.
So this is the start of something beautiful, hopefully. So come and join us.
Amazing, right? I'm so happy to have met you, Ryan. I'm happy to support you in this. And we know big things are coming in the future. So please, once again, check out that Kickstarter. Support Ryan in this project. It's a beautiful project. He's put his heart and soul into it. And thank you guys all for tuning in. And we'll be back soon with another episode with Dion. And we'll be talking about more wild occult mysteries. Peace and love. Take care, everyone.
Abracadabra.